I'm Logan Crawford, and right now on Spotlight, we delve into the powerful journey of James Copple as he battles cancer in a book called Meditations and Radiation. It is an inspiring book that offers personal reflections and meditations that helped Copple navigate his diagnosis and his treatment, providing hope and guidance for others facing similar challenges. We will explore how words became his lifeline and a tool for resilience. We're delighted to have this very talented author join us here today on Spotlight. We thank the team at Atticus Publishing for helping us put him in the spotlight today. And we ask viewers like you to support authors like him by subscribing to our channel and by purchasing his important book. The links are below this interview. James, great to see you here today on Spotlight.
It's good to be here. Thank you for having me. Look forward to this conversation.
Same here. You look great, very healthy, very robust. So your battle went well, no doubt.
It did.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was told with the diagnosis that prostate cancer, 90% of the people that have it usually survive it. And that it is an old white man's disease for the most part.
Yeah,
And,
yeah. They
but
actually say the percentage actually goes according to age. At 50%, you have a 50% chance of getting it, 60, 70, 80. So unfortunately, it's something that a lot of men do face. Um, but you faced it a little differently. You started writing meditations during your cancer treatment. Tell us a little bit about the motivation behind that.
Well, initially I had to do an MRI and I had to do a biopsy and I had to do a lot of scans. I'm a little bit claustrophobic.
Yeah.
And so I was actually more worried about going through that than I was the treatment itself. But I decided that I would choose a word each day to really meditate on and reflect on and then write about it when I came out of that treatment. And so for 27 days, I went through, I chose a word, words such as courage, grace, faith, forgiveness, uh, and began to meditate on those words and then wrote a brief piece. And then I also wrote questions that an audience could possibly use to think about their own situation, their own predicament, difficult, trying, or dangerous situation. It may not be cancer, it could be a financial crisis, it could be a personal crisis. And I've had some good responses to it, and I feel really good about what we've been going through.
What are some of those questions that you put down that people should ask themselves during a trying time?
Well, it would depend on the word. And recently I chose the word courage. I was reviewing what I had written and give an example of a courageous act that you've experienced, either as an act of courage that you've done or you've been the recipient or a beneficiary of somebody else's act of courage. Um, when the word of faith was used, how has faith informed you or influenced you and helped you cope with certain decisions or issues in your life? Hope, what has brought you into the future? What has sustained you? So those were the types of questions I tried to get the audience to engage in.
Gotcha. So you have a word that you focus on, and then you have a litany of questions that you go through
Yes,
that help refine that focus and make it important and
right.
for that situation.
Yeah. It was important to me to change the narrative. I mean, when you get the diagnosis, you have cancer. I know my father died from cancer, and I had a brother that died from cancer. And when you first hear those words, you just all of a sudden go into this echo chamber. You don't hear anything else
Right.
the first 10 or 15 minutes. And I decided, based on the response that the doctor gave me, that this isn't a terminal. You can navigate through this. You just have to follow the treatment, and you have to deal with it. And I wanted to change the narrative because obviously cancer is a negative narrative for most of us in our lives. But you could also turn this into something that's more meaningful, or to draw meaning from it, or to draw hope from it. And that's what I chose to do. And actually, writing the book helped me do that.
Yeah. Also, it's one of those, milestones in your life, whether it's cancer or heart disease or, your back going out, whatever it is, where you're kind of forced to focus a little bit on your own mortality and answer those questions about what's life all about? Why am I here? What have I given so far? Is it just about work? What have I contributed to society, my family, and so forth? So I'd imagine you had that kind of profound change as well, right?
Absolutely. Logan, the year before I was diagnosed, I had traveled 220 days out of the year in my work. We do a lot of work in East Africa. We do a lot of work, obviously, in the United States and different countries. And now all of a sudden I was grounded. I could not travel. I had to be close to home in order to deal with the treatment. And then with the recovery from the treatment, which took quite a toll on me.
Mm.
I was limited. And you start asking those questions. Am I going to be able to return to work? Am I going to be able to return to the kind of things I like to do? I'm a sailor. I love to sail. And when living on the East Coast, I had a boat, and I worried that I would never be able to do those things again.
Yeah.
Uh, but I was determined that I was not going to let this define who I was. I was going to continue to define my own life and not be defined by a disease.
Yeah. And we also learned during these times that we're more resilient than you ever expected. You can be
Absolutely.
weak as a kitten one day, the
Yeah.
next day you're as weak as a kitty cat, and then hopefully after a few months or years, you're back to being a tiger again, right?
That's 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 true, and that's my hope.
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely. Did
Yeah.
your work in education, youth work, international development influence your approach at all when dealing with cancer?
I think it did because I've seen a lot of hard things. I mean, I came out of the context of education, and but when I was working as special assistant to the superintendent of schools in Wichita, Kansas, I
Hmm.
also got involved in doing work with our local gangs. And
Hmm.
I rode with our police department. And for 18 months, I rode with our gang unit. And on the first night out with that gang unit, a 15-year-old literally died in my hands from a drive-by shooting. And plus the work I do in East Africa on gender-based violence. I see a lot of starvation. I see a lot of hurt and pain. We work in the Lodwar refugee camp in Kenya, in Nairobi, outside of Nairobi, Kenya. And so I've seen a lot of suffering and pain. And when I compared my own experience with that, um, it put it in a different context.
Yeah,
I can do
exactly.
this. I can do this, and I will do this.
Exactly. What do you hope readers take away from meditations and radiation?
That they develop a narrative of hope and
Mhm.
a narrative of promise that regardless of their faith tradition, where they come from, color of their skin, their geography, wherever they are, that there is something that pulls them into the future and they do not have to define their entire life by this diagnosis. They can continue to contribute, continue to give to others. And so I hope in reading this book that people begin to meditate and think on these words or these concepts and to also develop their own words. I challenge them not to be limited by the 27 words that I have in the book, but to actually develop their own words that are important to them.
Tell us a little bit about your writing career. Is this the first time you've written a book, or have you written other books?
I've written other books. I've written 5 other books, and uh, it's interesting. One of the books that probably was my most popular book is a book called I Believe, Reflections on a Daily Journey. I realized that if my children or my grandchildren were to read the things that I wrote, they would have really no understanding of what I truly believe because I'm usually writing for an audience or
Hmm.
under a contract. And so, I wrote President Obama's task force, or I helped write President Obama's task force on 21st century policing. And the reality is, my kids or my grandchildren wouldn't know what I believe, truly believe. So I chose a belief every day for 365 days in 2014, and I put an I believe statement on Facebook.
Hmm.
And some of them are humorous, some of them very serious and deep and profound, but it really helped me crystallize my own belief system, what
Hmm.
I believe politically, what I believe spiritually, what I believe emotionally. And that book helped me clarify who I am. And it helped a lot of other people begin thinking about their own belief system and to really identify because legacy is something it's beyond boats and houses and wealth
Hmm.
that we might pass on. It's the values that have shaped us and molded us. And those are the things that I want my children to remember about me, or I want my grandchildren to know about me, is what I stand for, what I believe in.
Yeah.
And that to me was really important. So a lot of my books have focused on those kinds of issues. And I've written, my first book really was on substance use, called Fatal Attractions and Youth Substance Use in this country, and what drives them into that behavior and how they can navigate out of it. So.
Very interesting, very philosophical, very, very interesting. The book, I believe, I was thinking about it as you spoke. I mean, we really are not anything more than our belief systems, really, because they color our world, they shape our world, and they're the beliefs that propel our actions as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
The name of the book we've been focusing on today, written by James Copple, is called Meditations and Radiation. It is about his journey, his battle against cancer, and he has penned a inspiring book that offers personal reflections and meditations that helped him navigate his diagnosis and treatment and will help provide you and others with hope and guidance for facing similar challenges. James, thanks so much for joining us here today on Spotlight.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure having you on the show. And to the folks at home, I'm Logan Crawford, thanking you for your time this time. Until next time on Spotlight.